Welcome back, Dallas Cowboys fans. This is the Blogging the Boys Roundtable. After many requests, we are officially back. Our first roundtable of the 2022 season every single Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Central Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. in Scotland, as you'll come to realize is important. We will be live here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel talking about the latest and greatest in the world of America's team. Of course, my name is RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys. I'll be joined every single week by various BTB staffers. Joining me today on Tuesday, July 26, 2022, going in clockwise order. You hear him every Monday on First and 10 on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. 1/3 of the tripod of that show. It is Antonio Anthony Catalina. I know it's not Antonio, but I want it to be, so I made it that in my mind. Tony, thanks for joining us. Off on our top right corner, coming in an impressive 6'4", lean, 205-pound frame, the world heavyweight champion. You read him at bloggingtheboys.com. You hear him on Thursday on Riled Up on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. It is the OG Tom Ryle, down in the southeast quadrant, hailing all the way from the motherland in Scotland. You hear him on now Saturdays, the World's Team with Meg Murray, of course, also one half of Girls Talking Boys. He is Paul Stewart. Thank you so much for being with us, Paul. He's the one staying up really late. He's actually in Wednesday already, so don't tell us any spoilers about the future, Paul. And then appropriately, kind of the opposite corner of the southeast, from the northwest part of our country. You see him, of course, all over the pages at bloggingtheboys.com, one of our older veterans when it comes to blogging the boys. And it's not in the world of life. He's a young stallion when it comes to just general human life. You can hear him on Fridays on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. All these guys are available on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. Search for us wherever you get your podcast. Leave a rating, write a review. It is Danny Phantom from the Star Seminar. Danny, we start with you. How is your Tuesday going? Welcome back to the Roundtable.
You know, it's going well. It's been really busy. So I'm actually glad to kind of like take a breath and actually get into some Cowboy stuff. So I'm real excited about this next hour of my time.
Sure. Well, the Dallas Cowboys are in Oxnard, California, so closer to your neck of the woods than usual. We have a lot of things to get to because the Cowboys did hold their annual State of the Cowboys opening training camp press conference. We had a live reaction show to that. You can go watch that on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel as well. Brian Simmons joins and says, I'm the first, like, yeah, LOL. Everybody should be like Brian, like the video, subscribe to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our wonderful content. Before we get started into subject matter, if you are familiar with the Roundtables, by the way, you can also listen to this show on the podcast network. You don't have to watch. We make sure it's available in different ways for you. There is a winner every single Roundtable. I'm exempt from this. I'm just the handsome, debonair host, to use Tom's words, really, not mine. But I will moderate, and I will make sure that we fairly, appropriately, and democratically assign a winner for each roundtable. So around the horn style, you guys are going to get points. Every time you say something cool or whatever, I'm going to tabulate points. If the listeners, the viewers that are with us live want to give you points, if anybody comments, Tom 2 points, I will give Tom 2 points. Obviously, within reason, if you're throwing out hundreds or thousands of points in one fell swoop, well, that's not going to work. So be smart with your adoration for your favorite BT beer. At the end of the roundtable, we'll assign a winner. But boys, a new wrinkle to the roundtable this year is the duel. If somebody says something that you disagree with, that you don't like, frankly, that you find stupid, you can challenge them to a duel, and you can challenge them for however many points you'd like. The maximum, though, is the minimum that one of you has. So hypothetically, if Tony wants to challenge Tom, Tony has 5 points at that particular moment. Tom has 7 points. Tony can only wager 5 points. And whoever wins that particular duel, everybody not named RJ in the roundtable will vote on who wins, gets all of the points. It's an all for naught. You can wipe out your opponent as much as you wish. Does everybody understand the rules?
Yep, sounds good.
Yep.
All right, so we're all starting on the fly. That's what, you know what, Tom? I'm not going to do that this year, all right? Again, I'm a new man. This first roundtable of the season. So I want to get off on the right foot. So to start things off, everybody gets a point. You're all at one, all right? So congratulations. Everybody's got their first point of 2022. Clayton Lockhart says, what's up, my peeps of the roundtable? I just smashed that like button. Glad to have the Roundtable back. Thank you, Clayton, for liking us. So let's go ahead and dive in. Whoever wants this, take it. I'm just like Joker style, throwing the pool cues in the middle. We've got an open spot on the team. JT says, hey guys, thoughts on Cole Beasley? This was not related to the press conference, but as soon as it was over, basically, Cole Beasley actually quote tweeted Tom, your co-host, Roy White, on our podcast network. Roy speculated on whether or not Cole Beasley would want to rejoin the Cowboys, obviously a current free agent. Cole quoted that and said, I would only want to be back to play with Dak Prescott, given that Dak is the quarterback of the team. It stands to reason that he has some level of interest. So whoever wants to take this, remember, there is a winner. Go.
I'll go ahead and say, since Roy White was involved, and I want to, stand up for my brother, I don't understand why Cole Beasley would be welcome back to the Cowboys if Amari Cooper wasn't, because they both had a very significant issue that had a lot to do with.
They both play receiver in the NFL. Yes, that's the issue in question, right?
Yeah, it's the issue we don't talk about here to keep things down to a dull roar. I just don't know what necessarily if he is what they need, but I'm not too sure that the Jones family would be willing to take him on board and possibly have to address the same kind of an issue with various other weird, nasty bugs cropping up out there. And do they need that slot guy? I think he can still contribute as a football player. Mike McCarthy just seems to be trying to head a very specific way with his locker room and his culture. And I just don't think he's really on the table with the Cowboys.
Yeah, I agree with Tom. I'm sour on Beasley. I don't want anything to do with him. I don't think he's that great, and I don't think that he would really give the Cowboys anything. Because I think how they utilize Dalton Schultz is, to me, I think Beasley wouldn't add very much. He doesn't like our facility. We know that. And another thing that I don't like, and it kind of like I saw the tweet, and he was kind of like, I'd play with Dak. I mean, almost insinuate, that's what it would take, because I don't really like the organization themselves, but to play with Dak, maybe I would do it. So to me, you know what, Cole, just go play somewhere else. I don't want him. Don't need him. Cowboys, they don't need him. So good riddance.
Tony, Cole Beasley did take a shot. Again, I think it's important to catch people up because it's been a few years at this point. He said that the Bills, he didn't say the Cowboys had trash facilities. He said the Bills had world-class facilities, which is a point that's actually been proven. Cole Beasley, on the subject of Dak, by the way, said very early in the process, once he joined the Mafia, that Josh Allen was the greatest athlete he had ever played with. And again, a lot of Cowboys fans at that time had some qualms with that and thought that was a shot at Dak. But again, that has also kind of aged rather well. So Cole definitely, wore his heart on his sleeve is maybe the most politically, nice way we could say it. Politics are obviously involved here to Tom's, implication. But Tony, you're kind of that like, Tony Soprano vibe, like, I forgive, but I never forget. Like, so like I could see you kind of being like, you know what? I don't want anything to do with this dude. I don't want him taking away slot snaps from CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, it's, I'm all in the business of bringing in quality football players, but understanding totally that, there may have been a bridge that he burned. And I don't really hold too much ill will to what Cole Beasley said, because what is he supposed to say in Buffalo? Like, actually, the last place I was at was much better. They had better food. They had better trainers. Like, it's not, you don't really put any stock in it. What comes down to me is you're right. Like, he's messy. There's been messy situations everywhere he's been. He's kind of, he's been talked out of retirement when he was in Dallas. He goes to Buffalo and he says certain things and does certain things. So it's been more trouble than it's worth. Ultimately, I think they look at it as a player that's on the field, and is he in his, past his prime, so to speak. And ultimately, the Cowboys, they got to put football players on the field and people that can help. And, we're not really in the business of trying to get any more distractions at this point.
Paul, all three of these guys on the same side of this argument, and creativity is a factor in the awarding of points, just so everyone's aware. The wide receiver, again, I think objectively, we can all agree with everything that everyone has said, but objectively, he would improve the wide receiver room. It is an area, if you had to pick one on the roster where the Cowboys should pursue a veteran free agent, it's not going to be Julio Jones. He's a member of the Buccaneers now. Cole Beasley would, in an objective sense, improve the quality of the wide receiver room, especially Michael Gallup expected him his time at the beginning of the season. Is it worth that to you, Paul?
Financially, no, because he's probably want more money than you could probably get from a undrafted.
Wow, Stephen Jones has entered the chat. Interesting that he's all the way in Scotland. All right.
No, like, and you know what's even kind of more embarrassing right now? I've actually got a signed Cole Beasley jersey right there behind me beside my light, so that's definitely getting shunted away right now. So, but yeah, I'm with everyone on the board on this one. Like, with the comments he made when he was at Buffalo, saying it was a better facility, etc., etc. He's had the shot at Dallas. There's no need for him to come back. There's no need. Like, we could probably get someone else in a much more cheaper deal and probably actually be more younger, faster, and probably be more effective than Cole right now. That's my end of the stick.
Okay, well, you know what, Paul? I think that you missed out on a point. JT said, got to give Paul a point so far, though, because he's right. What else are you supposed to say about a new job? Haha. JT, I think you mean Tony. Tony was the person who said that, what else is Cole supposed to say? Whatever, he's at a new place, blah, blah, blah. So, Tony, you've been given a point by one of our loyal viewers. So congratulations, Tony, off to the early lead with 2 points. Tom, I'm going to give you a point for going first. That showed initiative. So I like that. So now Tony's tied for the lead. Paul, Dan behind, but still a lot of show left. Lots of game to kind of get back in the mix. So that was not related to the press conference. And obviously, we've discussed the press conference a little bit here on the channel, but we need to get everybody's involvement here, everybody's thoughts, because it was kind of uncomfortable. I've watched a lot of Dallas Cowboys press conferences in my day, and the tenor of it was somewhat weird. Jerry Jones, I said this in our reaction video, fellas, it really felt like he had, and Tom, I know you watched it with heavy attention. It felt like Jerry had read everything and seen everything and listened to everything that everyone has been saying about his team so far this offseason. And it felt like he came out with every, ounce of ability that he could to try to dispel all those notions. I think he did a terrible job at it, but it still seemed like his intention. And so the first thing, and again, free for all, let's just do this. Let's just get wild. Let's get weird. It's a new year. Jerry Jones defended Mike McCarthy, sort of, is what our prompt says. For anyone who missed it, Jerry Jones, one of his very first things he said, he defended Mike McCarthy. He said that he is the coach of the Dallas Cowboys and that he has him as the coach of the Dallas Cowboys because he believes he can win a Super Bowl. If he had ended the sentence right there, nobody would have cared. Nobody would have given a damn. It would have been, attaboy, Jerry Jones, good job, you finally did it. And then Jerry Jones goes on to say, but I had choices. Whoa, Jerry, what are you doing, man? Like, why are you casting this down out here like this? What's more is, for anyone who's unaware, earlier this week, an interview with Mike McCarthy appeared in the Dallas Morning News where McCarthy specifically noted that he was irritated that he is being asked about the state of his job. He said that he called it a media-driven narrative. I don't think it's media-driven. I think it's Jerry Jones-driven. Jerry Jones, after the press conference, and again, this is where any of you can jump in here, he said that, and we've heard this before, he has kind of used this line of logic, he specifically left Mike McCarthy floundering in the wind in an effort to keep Dan Quinn. And I suppose we can kind of follow that logic, but it makes his head coach look like a putz. And I don't know anybody who's in the business of making the most important person in their building look like that, except for Jerry Jones. And then for him to come back here and be like, you guys are crazy. You guys are the ones stirring this pot. No, this was a really, you guys, Tony used the word messy to describe Cole Beasley. This was a really messy affair from Jerry Jones regarding Mike McCarthy.
RJ, I think you just missed one key important fact as well. It's the fact.
Wow,
that
negative 5 points, Tom or Paul. Jeez, how dare you?
Oh no, negative. It's like one key fact that Jerry Jones says he was not willing to give an extension as well.
That's right. I mean, you think other coaches in the NFL have gotten extensions, and Mike McCarthy has not, and so that serves to the point as well. Tom, you were going.
Yeah, but he's only in the third year of a 5-year deal. It's a little early to be talking about an extension, especially since we don't know where this team is really going this season. And I think that was a little bit of baiting Jerry, trying to stir up something. And I thought that was not really highly pertinent at the time. So I didn't think that is something that needs to be addressed right now. Next year, that might be a question to ask if things go well this year. But until then, I don't think that was really something to bring up.
What's interesting to me is Jerry Jones sets himself up, right? There's opportunities, like he presents and gives these conversations a chance for, you look at the way he talks and you're like, okay, Jerry, you could really set it straight, or you can find a way to give Mike McCarthy a boost of confidence here. And even when you think he does, or you think he did, it's not, confidence boosting at all. And you're sitting there, it's like, okay, everything that we're talking about is validated by the words that you're speaking, the things that you're saying.
Dan.
Yeah, you gotta remember that Jerry Jones doesn't know how to talk right. I mean, he's going to say things and they're going to mean different things to us than what he's trying to say. So, I mean, I didn't see the press conference, so I can't really, put my Jerry speak, try to translate it. But from what it sounds like, it's, and Tony got a point for this. I'll just want to point out, but what else is he supposed to say when it comes to like, supporting his coach? And I'm sure they're getting tired of it. And I do think I hate to disagree with the guy giving away the points, but I do think it's media driven. I wish they would stop asking these silly questions. I feel bad for McCarthy.
To that point, Dan, I'm with you. Like, I'm not saying the media is not at fault. Like, Jerry Jones appeared on 105 Through the Fan as soon as the season ended against 49ers, and he was asked, right? And I think, so some would say, like, hey, that's a ridiculous question. The Cowboys just won 12 games. They won the NFC East. I know that they lost in the playoffs, but still, like, what are you doing? Nobody's asking, Zach Taylor if his job's in jeopardy because the Bengals lost the Super Bowl, right? Like, if you're a playoff team, that should come with some cachet. So I'm with you in that sense. But if Jerry were truly, he half said that Jerry cannot have his cake and eat it too here. He comes out and says, this is the coach that I believe can win the Super Bowl. If that's the case, then the moment you're asked that question, you have to say, what are you talking about, guys? This coach just won 12 games. He just won the NFC East. Why would I be considering making a change? I believe this guy can win the Super Bowl. So there is some flip-flopping that's happening here. And maybe it's because Jerry wants to keep the Cowboys in the conversation. Clayton Lockhart in our comment section says that he says and does whatever is necessary to keep the Cowboys the subject of conversation for everyone. I think we all, at least to some degree, believe that that's what Jerry did when he left Mike McCarthy to flounder, whether it was even partly to keep Dan Quinn around. Again, like, my point, and I mentioned this on the NFC's mixtape, and this episode will come out on the podcast network on Wednesday with Brandon Gotten from Bleeding Green Nation. But look, I love Dan Quinn. I know we all love Dan Quinn. But if you're Jerry Jones, and Dan, I know you didn't watch the press conference. That was his exact quote. He said, "I have Mike McCarthy here because I believe he can be the coach. There, he is the coach that will lead us to the Super Bowl." Whatever. I mean, I'm somewhat butchering it. If that's the case, then to hell with Dan Quinn. I mean, if that's the case, if you believe that Mike McCarthy is the head coach to win the Super Bowl for you, then 100 out of 100 times you choose him over Dan Quinn because that's your guy. We all love Dan Quinn, and I'm not saying like the Cowboys should have moved on. It was a big deal they were able to retain him, but Mike McCarthy is far more important in the priority ladder than Dan Quinn, and Jerry didn't act that way. So he can't sell both sides of this story. They conflict with one another is my point.
Right, and then he can't. You're right, and I think, but what's happening is I don't think he believes in McCarthy, but I think he wants to, and he's going to try to, and he's going to say that he does for this last season of McCarthy's, and I think that, but sometimes Jerry's honesty comes through. It sneaks out, and so you're absolutely right. I mean, he does that to himself, but I mean I believe that's what Jerry feels. But right now in this moment, it's all about Mike McCarthy, and that's really all that matters, and there shouldn't be any talk about anything else until after the season.
Then, I mean, the reason that the conversation continued today, and again, this is my point, is because Jerry didn't just say, he's my guy, he's the coach going to the Super Bowl. He said, and I had choices. And then after the press conference is over, he comes out and even adds, well, the whole reason I did this, like, none of that's necessary. And you're right, some of that's Jerry Jones, but then maybe, Jerry, you should adjust the way you're being. And I know people have been saying this for a quarter century. I'm not breaking news to anybody, but, I mean, If the media is partly responsible, I think it's an 80-20 split. I think that the media is responsible for 20% of this mess. I mean, we know that it irritates Mike McCarthy, and his direct superior in this job is I think 80% responsible for all the dysfunction that's encircling him at the moment.
Yeah, but Jerry's never going to keep it short, and like you spoke on it, that's Jerry being Jerry, and I think that's just and I'll tell you what, media knows Jerry's going to be Jerry, so they're gonna stick that line out there because they know he's going to take it.
I disagree with Dan, but a point for believing in his idea. So Dan is up to 3. Anybody else have anything to add here?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't it always feel like Jerry Jones is like a word or two too long? Like you could have been like, I support Mike McCarthy. if you stop right there, everyone's like, and then he's like, but I had options though, and I could have done this. And it's like,
I'm not going to
okay,
deduct a point
thanks,
from you,
man.
Tony. Nobody knows this, but you did tell us privately that your AirPods went out. That we said
Oh.
that. So
Fair
I'm not
enough.
going to deduct a point for the redundancy, but you're right. I mean, just so that I don't want anybody to be like, what the hell is Tony doing? They just said that. So, it was a technical issue. Wasn't Tony's fault. No points lost there. Anybody else want to go
on
to
the
bat
same
for
page.
Jerry or McCarthy?
Yeah. For me, Jerry is pretty much being like the media orchestra for this right now. Like, he's basically bad. Like, if that's one thing Jerry does very, very well, is keeping the Cowboys within the mainstream media. Like, he did it with Zeke years ago with the whole Zeke who or that. Now he's doing it with Mike McCarthy. Like, how many times has Jerry just turned from what should have been a simple solution, just saying, he's my guy, that's it, but he prolonged it, added unnecessary comments, and it's now became a media spur, pretty much. So I'm not too thrilled about it.
Tom, along those lines, and then we'll move on. By the way, Ruse says, yes, Paul conducting the orchestra. All right, Ruse throwing, 2 points, because I like the musical reference there for Paul. So Paul's up to 4. He's our leader at the moment. Tom, you and I were kind of agreeing on Twitter as this was unfolding live. I really, and you nodded when I said this at the very beginning, that Jerry was just kind of addressing everything that's been said about his team over this whole offseason. It really felt like that fell on deaf ears today. I don't know anybody. I mean, obviously there's a sector of fans that are going to kind of lap up and take everything no matter what. But it really felt like it was just all not a facade, but it just all was. I think we've talked, Tom, about people are more apathetic, people are less believing, people are still interested, but they trust less. However you want to put it. And I feel like that's on display here. I feel like nobody bought this. Like, Jerry may have been able, not even may, Jerry was absolutely capable of charming people into believing whatever in the past, but that didn't really happen today, I thought.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, almost everything that was in the press conference could have been cut and lifted from a previous press conference over the past few years. We've heard all of this before. We've heard him stand by the coach that he thought was going to take him to the Super Bowl. We've heard him. We've heard Stephen Jones give his explanations about how he's the smartest cap manager in the NFL and how he's doing it the right way and how he thinks he really helped their team by doing nothing in free agency. We've heard it. It's tiring. It's wearisome. And a lot of us just aren't buying it the same way. And my excitement level just hasn't happened with the Cowboys.
Tom, I've got 2 more points for you. Tom's up to 6 now, everybody. It's getting competitive in here.
Just to add on top what Tom just said there, it generally feel like it's a rerun of a speech, like a rewrite of the original. Like,
yeah,
that's how bad it is.
I feel like JT says it is tiresome. I feel like Drew Barrymore in 51st States. Like, we're just living the same day over and over and over and over again. And the people around us are kind enough to acquiesce to that, print the same paper, get a pineapple for us. I forget the other details in the movie, but I mean, like, we need the intervention. We need Adam Sandler is really what I've learned in this process. So let's move on. I'm going to give Dan 3 points here, and Dan currently has 3, so he's up to 6 at this point, tied with Tom for the lead, and giving Dan the lead for initiative. I gave all these guys 24 hours notice to offer questions or things they wanted to discuss. Dan offered something specific, and so other guys learned something from Dan. All right, and just so you know, this is a live thing. If you have something specific you want to talk about, message it to me privately in our chat client, and I'll get it prepped here for the show for us to discuss as we continue to move on. But Dan, you wanted to talk about, I know you didn't get to see it, Jerry Jones did have a line that we'll say was met with consternation on Twitter.com. He said that he believes that the Dallas Cowboys are better this season today than they were at this time last year. You can word that however you want, but the point is Jerry Jones believes the talent of the Cowboys is better right now than it was entering training camp a year ago. Dan, this was your point. You wanted to talk about this. You got 3 points for initiative to start things off. The floor is yours.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think he's wrong. I know that this isn't going to be a very popular opinion, but I think the Cowboys are a better team. I mean, if you really break things down, and it takes you kind of laying everything out there. You look at this is going to be year 2 of Quinn. And I know you say, well, we got all the same players. Basically, yeah, we do, but we have Curse and Hooker. In his system longer. They're going to be more seasoned, ready to go. You look at, we're going to have Tank for more games because he missed a lot of time. Micah probably will be challenging for Defensive Player of the Year. Again, he's only going to get better. I like what we have, with Osa. I think he'll be better this year. I think Neville beefed up. He could be better as in the nose spot. And then you turn things around on the other side, and you got an improved left guard, because that's got to be better. And then the biggest thing of all, and this is why we are better, is we are going to have a better quarterback. And that's because we're going to have a healthy Dak Prescott, and that's going to change everything. The Cowboys were already a good team, and, they made it to the playoffs, and they could have made a run if they played a little better. Were they a Super Bowl team? But they were a contender. And I think that nothing's going to change this year. I think that they're going to be up there again, contending. Will they win a Super Bowl? I don't know. But I think they're going to be just as good, if not better, than last year. So Jerry Jones, I think he got something right.
All right, so before we dive in and dissect, a show of hands, and if you're watching along live with us, if you're watching or listening later, you can certainly let us know. But if you're with us live, obviously the panelists, please show us your hands. If you're in the comments, please let us know with your words. Who agrees? Raise your hand if you agree. The Dallas Cowboys are better today than they were this day. Dan, you don't have to raise your hand. We already know you agree. But who agrees the Dallas Cowboys are better today than they were at this time last year? Go. All right, so the podcast audience cannot see. Dan, I agree with you. I think it's, again, this is just Jerry being Jerry, not understanding that when you say this right now, especially coming off the heels of the offseason that you've had, you're going to get a lot of eyes rolling. And to be fair, I think that I wouldn't use this verbiage. I would say that they are more known quantities. A year ago, we in no way trusted anybody along the defense the way we have this sort of implied and implicit trust with Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs, maybe DeMarcus Lawrence if you want to throw him in there. I think people were somewhat high on Leighton Vander Esch. But a year ago, this defense had Jalen Smith as a significant part of it at this time of year. I mean, that's worth saying. So this defense is certainly more trustworthy. The offense, I will not deny, is, I think, worse on paper. It's difficult. There are a lot of question marks. I don't know that I think they're better at left guard right now, Dan. That I do disagree with you. I'm not saying Tyler Smith can't become better than Connor Williams. I've maintained I'm one of the only BTBers who somehow sang the songs of praise for Connor Williams on and on and on. I think he was vilified and I think overrated in a bad sense because of all the penalties and things like that, but he was a very solid player for 4 years. Obviously, Amari Cooper being gone, we can talk about political reasons and whatnot, but he is an absence that is going to be felt, especially without Michael Gallup on the field early on. I have no idea how much I trust Terrence Steele. I know we've seen him a lot, and I know Lyle Collins has some availability issues. We'll get to that point in a little bit, but he was a very good player. And so I think the Cowboys have regressed on offense. I certainly trust Dak Prescott, to your point, Dan, but they are relying on him being Superman. And he maybe can be, but it's a very unlikely thing that he can do that week in and week out, because I don't think anybody can. It's not like Dak's not good enough. It's just impossible to do in the NFL. So I think they're more known. I think they're better in that sense. But I do think that they're more shallow from a depth perspective. So I kind of agree with this statement. But again, I don't think that's where Jerry was coming from specifically. I think he's trying to sell us something just because of the way things are going. But let's see. Zachary says, I think RD is going to be a force, at least. Clayton says, thumbs up. As long as the quarterback stays healthy, we are better. JT says, I don't trust Terrence Steele. I still remember 2020. So who else wants to go?
I just want to say that the problem with the defense is I think they're going to have to be better to stay the same. And that's because last season they lived and died on takeaways. And that is something that is almost certainly going to see a regression to the mean. They still could be quite good at takeaways, but I don't think they're going to lead the league. And if they're not leading the league in takeaways, they're going to have to be better at the fundamentals, at stopping the run, at covering the pass, at getting to the pass rusher. And then on offense, there's just so many what ifs. Somebody asked earlier about what if CD gets hurt? They got
to that point, Tom. 3 points for Tom because he took care of our super chatter. JT, thank you very much for the super chat, Tom. Not to totally interrupt, but this is your point. JT saying, I have to super if you guys are doing a whole segment for my question. What happens if CD gets hurt long term, tank this season, or trade for a receiver? That is a question, Tom. To your point, that is one of the sort of loose ends that is lingering. If CD Lamb gets hurt, if their perfect plan falls apart, they are a little bit up a creek at a very important position.
Yeah, and injuries are the scary thing. When you're relying on certain players to come out and have a monster year, then you're risking losing one of them. You never can predict that. You hope it doesn't happen, but it adds a little element of uncertainty, even fear about what about the things that go wrong. This is the time of year where everybody is looking at what could go right, and the regular season, we can find out the things that aren't going to go right. And that's kind of where they are. I think the Cowboys have too many questions on offense and were too reliant on takeaways last year. I don't think they're in a better position. I don't think they're in a horrible position, but I think they're going to have to fight off the rest of the division more than they did last year when they just pretty much trounced everybody.
See, I'm kind of in somewhat 50-50. I agree with yourself, Tom, and I agree with Dan. Like, I think if you are looking from the outside perspective of what you're dissecting the squad in terms of growing it like next year under Stan Quinn and stuff like that, yeah, I can see it being an improvement. Maybe not so much takeaways. I completely get that. But I think from fans, like, what have we done to bring players in? Have we done enough to bring new injection in? Like, from overall, like, free agency? That's the big question. Answer is really no, we haven't. We completely blundered that. So I can see fans would actually be, how can our squad be better if we haven't brought in new injection of blood into the squad?
Yeah, but the answer is always no to that question, though, Paul. I mean, and look at what we did. We got about contribution from players like Curse and Watkins, and so.
But that's a point. I know Tom and I share that point. We worry that serves to their detriment this season. That Stephen Jones, is of the belief, oh, hey, this methodology worked out, baby. Watch out, James Washington, Dante Fowler, they're this year's versions. That this fed the idea that, picking off the low-hanging fruit. Sometimes the lowest hanging fruit is the sweetest, but in this case, it might not always be. Tony, you're last to go here, so if you want some points, you better do something special. Do you agree that they're better? Do you see that argument? Is it foolish? Like, where do you land?
No, I mean, nothing that Danny Phantom says is ever foolish. I think he puts a lot of thought into his points, and
2 points for courtesy and kindness, respect.
My thing is, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with the Dak Prescott assessment. I think he's going to be better this year, and I truly believe that this could be and has a chance to be one of his best seasons, if not his best season. Where we differ a little bit is, I think wide receiver is paper thin. I think we all know that. We're like one injury away from like Tony Pollard being almost a full-time wide receiver at this point, right? Like,
he should be one anyway. Why? Who cares? Why wait for someone to get injured?
Enough.
Right.
Fair enough, right? But now you have to get a little more creative, and they should, right? I mean, Tony Pollard is that type of player. You should get as many touches, manufacture as many times as you can. But offensive line, there's question marks, more question marks than there's been. If Tyron Smith is out, like, is it Tyler Smith kicks out the left tackle, and then who's playing left guard? Is it Connor McGovern? We know that he didn't look great there. And then you look at tight end. Blake Jarwin isn't here, so you can even have an argument that even tight end's a little thinner now. Yes, I feel really good about the defense. I absolutely love the secondary. I love the cornerbacks. I love the safeties. And what a night and day difference from a year about how we feel about the secondary. Linebacker is paper thin. Right, I mean, Jabril Cox coming back from an ACL injury, Michael Parsons being more of a hybrid player.
Tony, I want to interrupt you very, very briefly because something you guys had on 1st and 10 that I don't think got enough attention. I tweeted about this late on Monday night. So you guys, Tony does a show every Monday on our network with Aiden Davis and Dave Sturcio. And this week on 1st and 10, they had on Michael Gelkin from the Dallas Morning News and Kyle Yeomans at DallasCowboys.com. Michael Gelkin is arguably the most plugged-in Dallas Cowboys insider on the Cowboys beat, and he talked about Jabril Cox. And you guys were talking about him, and he specifically said, look, he didn't say, like, people need to pump the brakes. These are my words, not his. But he said, look, I mean, when he got hurt last year, he was still playing on special teams. Like he wasn't this defensive superstar quite yet. So he has all this road to come back from just the injury. And Gelkin said that, they might just ease him in from a special team standpoint. Like, I think people, Tony, to that point have just kind of assumed, oh, well, Jabril Cox is coming in. Boom, 9 backers taken care of. That might not be the case right away.
Right. And then the part is it's almost unfair to assume he's going to come in and make a massive defensive impact anyway. Right. I think we all would love for that to happen. So for that to happen would be great. And I think a lot of what Dan says is based on the fact that we're going to hit on all these guys, right? Neville Gallimore is going to take that leap, and Micah Parsons is going to be another freak, and Trayvon Diggs is not going to, he's going to have to be a double-digit interception guy or be better, so to speak, in coverage. It's just a lot has to go right. And like you mentioned, RJ, they're paper thin. Like they're not as deep in the back end. And if anything were to go wrong injury wise, it just puts them in a tighter, scarier situation. And that's why people like myself were hoping they'd spend a little bit more of the pie, because at least I'm not looking for big names, but I feel like they haven't done enough to shore the back end, maybe the second level of this team.
All right, an update on where we're at from a point standpoint. We are tied for the lead. We have a tie between Tony and Tom. A very contentious battle happening at the top of this screen. But Paul, Dan, stay confident. You're still in the mix. Dan, I've got you down for 8 points at the moment. You picked up a lot. You had a lot of ground to make up from early on, but this question really instilled and incited some debate and some discussion. So good for you being a leader, being the first one to kind of, be a trailblazer and ask a question yourself and put it to the group and challenge your competitors. Paul got you down for 7 points. That's okay. There's a lot of game left. 7, Monica Geller, what up? But in fact, speaking of Paul, Paul now gets 3 points. So Dan, you're left in last place for now. There's a 3-way tie at the very top. Paul, I tried to word this in a way that made sense off your private message to me. And this was the headline, that what I'm putting on the screen, that Jerry Jones kind of took a shot at Amari Cooper, Lyle Collins, and Randy Gregory. He talked about availability being a big reason why the Cowboys made the decisions that they did in the offseason. I don't think it takes a genius or any of us to be Rhodes scholars to look at these players and understand why the Cowboys moved on. Amari Cooper missed games. We already talked about the political element to that. Lyle Collins, very, very infamously missed games, missed the entire 2020 season, is now on the NFI list with the Cincinnati Bengals. Randy Gregory's on the PUP list for the Denver Broncos at the current moment. Obviously had a lot of missed time with the Cowboys. Those are different factors, but still is the case. But Paul, this did feel like a shot because there was no real reason to kind of attack their availability at this point. They're not around. They're on different teams. And as a lot of people pointed out, there's a little bit of hypocrisy happening here. The Cowboys wanted to keep Randy Gregory. They had a contract laid out for him, so they can't pretend like, oh, wow, we wanted nothing to do with this dude. Availability is a big question mark for his. So you got the points to start this question off. Paul, the floor is yours.
Yeah, the main one for me is Amari Cooper, right? He came out and said, we lost these certain players. We lost. No, you didn't, Jerry. You traded Amari Cooper. You didn't lose him. You traded him. That really annoyed the living hell out of me when I was watching that press conference. I really wanted to throw my remote control.
2 more points for emotion. I like this. Keep going, Paul.
So, and he kept iterating the word lost or losed out on certain players and stuff like that. I'm just sitting there watching my television, just like, what is, like, no, you either traded away or you had lost out every opportunity to re-sign this player, i.e. Randy Gregory. You could have signed him from game 4 of the season onwards, not to the last point of the like going up to the draft and stuff like that, and he's off to Denver now. Like, he had every opportunity to sign these players. So you didn't lose. They didn't lost or lose them. You just didn't bother your backside to do anything, Jerry. That's it. Sorry. I had to rant there. I had to rant.
Yeah, I think you could take the sort of out of here. I feel like the shot was almost like it landed and hit the target. I think the only one who caught a little stray was Randy Gregory. I feel like this was more so for Amari Cooper and Lyle Collins, because we saw there was no, we are always kind of like, oh, where's the leak in the camp for the Dallas Cowboys? Because we know their every move before it happens. But now it's like, no, they were making it crystal clear how they were handling these two guys' situations. I think the Randy Gregory situation was unfortunate how it unfolded. But when Jerry speaks, you got to listen to it. You got to listen through the Jerryisms a little bit. And I think he was talking to them directly.
Yeah, and there's another bit of hypocrisy because it's not really availability. It was something else. They re-signed DeMarcus Lawrence and Michael Gallup, and they certainly had availability issues last year. So there's obviously something else really that's at the root of it. And I think it's, for lack of a better word, Jerry and Steven got their feelings a little bit hurt with these players. So, I think that's kind of where this was coming from. It was pity and probably very unnecessary.
I do agree, Tom, and Dan, we'll put it to you to kind of tie a bow on this as you look to get back in the point game here. But that's the best way. Actually, Tom, 2 more points for that. I love that. The whole thing felt like and smelled like they got their feelings hurt. Like they are just tired. They're sick of people saying, and I think some things are a little bit overdone, like things like Cat Boy and stuff like that. Like we can be upset about the way they handle the team without, taking personal shots and things like that. But I mean, it really felt like they are bothered. Like they really believe not only that they are the smartest people in the room, but that how dare any of the subjects of the kingdom question what the mighty royal court decides to do. We should all just silently accept it and be thankful for our opportunity to live throughout the palace and to walk along the same halls.
Yeah, and I do agree that they feel that way, but I also at the same time feel that they kind of have a little bit of credit. I mean, because the Cowboys don't make a lot of mistakes where they make these decisions and that comes back to bite them. They actually make pretty good decisions overall. And I will say this, I don't know that it's necessarily just availability, but I think it comes down to value over replacement. And when you look at taking count these players' availability, and like of course, Lyle Collins is an example. You're paying him $10 million to be your swing tackle, so to speak, and then you look at like what they expect from Armstrong compared to what Gregory usually gives you on a given year, because he doesn't play every game, and with Cooper too. And now that's one that's I'm a little bit different on, because I think highly of Cooper. However, if Dak don't throw him the ball, then he's no longer the number one. Then he's a different player. And now you look at the value of a replacement, and is he worth $20 million now? So I don't know. To me, I don't have a problem with the Cowboys, making the decisions they have. With the Gregory thing, I think that debacle is still, a lot of that is not understood to me, and it could come down if it genuinely was due to some type of contract thing. It is about availability then, because they're trying to protect their investment. So I don't know. I don't have a problem with that as much as a lot of other people do.
My only counter to that, Dan, is because I can see the logic you laid out, but you said, is Amari Cooper worth $20 million? I think absolutely, because the market for that changed significantly over the course of the offseason, and they forecast that very incorrectly. $20 million for a receiver of Amari Cooper's caliber is a bargain now, and they misunderstood that. And the argument that they wouldn't be able to afford their current team is invalid, because they could fit Amari Cooper under their salary cap at the moment easily. And so, that to me is if they made one true mistake, because you can argue that the Randy Gregory and the Lyle Collins things are just matters of opinion, but the Amari Cooper thing, and even fine, like deciding you don't want him, that is a matter of opinion, but misevaluating the receiver market was a huge mistake that really costed them in several senses over the course of the offseason. To get caught up here, Joey Stewart awarded Tom 5 points. A new rule that I'm making up: the maximum amount of points that somebody can award in the comment section to a BTBer is 5, so we don't get away from ourselves. So Tom, you do get all 5 of those points. I just don't want people coming out handing 7, 10 points and putting too big of a gap. But Tom is currently sitting on 19 points. Tony, Paul, I've got you down for, and Dan, I've got you all down for 12. So it's anybody's game at this point. Philip Bray says, I hate this, but what about the kicker? 1 game, 1 kick, make or break the season. Are we all in agreement that Jonathan Garibay is the Cowboys kicker right now? We feel pretty confident in that?
His job to lose.
Yes, that's the way to put it.
Okay, good. Let's move on. Dan, you touched on this subject. I'm not going to give you any points for it, but this is not anything related to the press conference, but related to training camp as a whole. It is our first roundtable of camp after all. So I just open question. Whoever wants it, take it. Who is the Dallas Cowboys swing tackle? Because I cover this team for a living, and I have no idea. I think I know. I think it's probably Josh Ball. But I don't. And I will say, Stephen Jones mentioned young players that the team is excited about. He specifically brought up CeeDee Lamb. I think we're all in agreement with that. He mentioned Tyler Smith. He mentioned not just Josh Ball, but Matt Woletsko, who was drafted in the 5th round this year. He mentioned Dorrance Armstrong, who we know his father Jerry has quite a bit of love for. But so who's the swing tackle for the Dallas Cowboys? Because it's not an obvious answer, I don't think.
I don't think they know.
Whoa, guys! We have rules and order around here. No, I'm just kidding. I heard Tom. Let's go Tom, Tony, Paul, Dan in that order.
Yeah, I think he may not be on the roster yet. I think if there's anything that can pry some of that cap space away from Stephen Jones, it's if they get into week 3 or 4 of training camp and they still don't have an answer at swing tackle, they'll be out signing somebody. And I think we're going to see some guys come in for tryouts trickling through there. They also may be looking at like linebacker and wide receiver depth. But swing tackle to me is the one they've got to get sorted out, because we know Tyron Smith's history, and they're going to need something there that will not just let this team fall apart.
Okay, Tony. So Tom's answer is named TBD. Tom is a write-in candidate. Tony, who do you got?
Yeah, Kyle Humans was on our show and he mentioned that's what he thought as well. He thought that the swing tackle wasn't on the roster. And I think the answer to the question is I don't think the Cowboys have any idea either. I think Josh Ball is a mystery. I think him having that redshirt year is interesting. It's a wrinkle in this, that, like, I don't know what his development is. I don't even know what to expect from him to come out here. Like, if he comes out there and he's stonewalling people, it's like, okay, they may have hit on him. But then there's a lot of people that feel really good about let's go and his development for a late round draft pick. So there's some people that think that it's his job to lose, and I think my answer, if I had to ask, it would probably be off the roster as well. I think they need to find a veteran. They have a $20 million cushion, and this is the exact position you would put yourself in to bring somebody in to make you feel a little better about the spot.
All right, we've got 2 for write-in. Paul.
Yeah, to be honest, like what Tom was saying earlier, I would actually even award him points for that statement.
Okay, 2 more points for Tom. We're up to 22.
It's a good point. But if I'm going to based on athleticism, you have to give it a Willetsko. Like the guy's RAC score going into the draft was off the charts. But Josh Ball was definitely a bit more of a mauler in a way, but if one guy we've not actually talked about, and you could say he has more of he's been put on more guard, but he can play tackle as well, and it's Isaac Aracon as well. No one's talked about him. He's that type of guy. He can move different parts of the O-line, so who knows? It could be him as well.
Okay, so we've got to vote for Isaac Alarcon. Didn't anticipate that. That's what makes the roundtable. Danny Phantom.
I give a point to Paul for bringing up Isaac.
Hey.
Look at this. The points are raining back and forth. I love this. Okay, Danny.
I think you guys are so close to being right. And so I'm going to try to reel it in a little bit. And so first off, I think that we don't have any idea what's going on with the swing tackle position. But I believe the Cowboys have this heightened level of belief in what they have. Now, I'm not saying it's right, but I think they believe in their players. And because of the decisions they made, I think that they believe in Josh Ball. I like Matt Willetsko, and I do agree that I think he's the more athletic, the bigger, and the high character guy, very coachable. I don't think it'll be long before he's in the mix in this. But I think they went into this whole draft and with Josh Ball, and another guy we'll bring up too, and like Paul, I think was real close. Because I think Avante Collins might be somebody who they see a floor in him. That's like that they think that if worst case scenario we could get by with this guy, because look what they did with Terrence Steele and look what they did with Brandon Knight. I mean, so I think that the Cowboys, they believe that they can coach these players to handle the swing position, and it may be an outside guy, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like they would have done more if they were really concerned, and they haven't. So this makes me feel they really like what they have.
I think everybody would say that they're less willing to trust them, Dan, than you are. Is kind of the like genesis of the disagreement. I think you're all wrong, to be very fair here. All right, because I've been thinking about it more. I've been listening to your answers, and again, I think you're all wrong. So we just wasted a bunch of time. Tell me if this sounds ridiculous. I'd love to hear. I think it's Tyler Smith. I mean, tell me if Tyron Smith is out for a game that they don't believe in I think we all think that they clearly believe that Tyler Smith is Tyron Smith reincarnated, right? They have found the 20-year-old version of Tyron Smith in the body of Tyler Smith. And if they truly want to go best 5, which is a methodology we know that they have used and obviously implemented in the past, you go from left to right, Tyler Smith, Connor McGovern, and then the rest of your offensive line. And could anybody not see that happening? I'm not advocating for that necessarily, but like, could anybody not see the Cowboys doing that?
I think you're ridiculous, RJ. I think somebody on the show said, I don't know if I have as much faith in Tyler Smith, as you do. And you know what? That was one of the smartest things you said today. And you're right. But now imagine him playing tackle. So no, I'm not saying it's a good idea, but like, tell me that. I mean, we're trying to smell what the team is cooking. That's what I'm trying to do here. Like, does nobody think that they're cooking that in their kitchen? No, but here's why I don't think so. And I think because he was drafted. I really felt that they may think that now, and they may have hopes for that now, but I don't think that like they were going in there to say, well, we're just going to draft Tyler Smith. I feel like they were confident before. So that's why Tyler Smith is not really, in the mix there with as far as what the Cowboys think right now.
Haven't they even mentioned that they don't like to make two moves for one? So by moving Tyler Smith, you're really displacing
Sure.
two positions for one. And so it's
Again,
like, I think
I'm not saying this is a great idea, but they have hyped up Tyler Smith and his kick outness eventually to left tackle. I mean, could we not? I mean, I could. Again, I'm living more in the world of like what they will sell, and they'll be like, "Hey, we trust this guy. That's why we drafted him because we know he can do it." I agree with you, Tony, generally from a philosophical standpoint, but I mean, I would if they were truly that. I don't even want to say forward thinking, then they wouldn't be in this bind right now where we all have this massive amount of mystery in terms of who the swing tackle really is going to be.
And I just think it might be possible that they won't just have one backup tackle. They might have to carry two on the roster just to try to find a workable answer if something should happen.
And to that point, Tom, I just want to say is with Waletzko and Ball, they don't even have to. I mean, they could have a specialized left tackle swing and a right tackle because of the flex of Terrence Steele. So that's one thing that those guys can just concentrate on that one position. So you're right. There could be two guys that will be depending on who gets hurt. As your comes in.
Jennifer says, "Well, let's go is going to be the swing. At least that's what they're thinking." I mean, so if your choice is, and let's just live in that world, or let's live in Jennifer's world here. Would you guys? I'm asking all of you. Paul, I think, had an internet connection, and that's why he's out for the moment. But what would you rather do? Well, let's go play left tackle against whoever, like pick the opponent, or Tyler Smith kick out to left tackle, Connor McGovern play guard. What plan do you prefer, hypothetically?
The first one. I don't want to do the twofer. I don't like that.
I agree.
Does anybody like the idea of kicking Tyler out in that hypothetical, or is anybody willing to say it's opponent contingent? Maybe not even opponent contingent. Maybe week contingent. Maybe it's the week coming off the bye, something like that. Like, is somebody willing to say it's contingent on some factors?
I feel like they've already tried that method before.
Yeah, and the training camp may give us some clarity on this. If they start working Tyler out at tackle some, then we'll know that's where they're thinking. If he's spending all his time at guard, then I don't think they'll go that route.
2 points for Tom. Way to go. All right. 3 points for Dan for, again, sticking by his guns. Dan has been the strongest believer. Dan has had the most conviction tonight, and I admire that. Paul, I'll give you 2 points for coming back from the sneaky internet issues. It's always impressive to be able to handle on the fly. Tony, no points for anything right there. Just, you got to earn them. That's all. Okay. Anybody have anything else they want to discuss before we hit any sort of, closing statements or anything like that? Now is the time.
I did want to say, I wanted to mention that you talk about they're not doing anything. And if you look at the positions, and Tom touched on this already, and we are going to see this in camp. There are like, if say Jabril Cox isn't ready, and he may not be, I expect them to kind of bring him along, slowly. But you know what? So what? I mean, if they have problems, look how many you got. Quan Alexander, you got Anthony Hitchens. There's a lot. There's Joe Schobert. There's a lot of guys that know how to tackle people. And you're going to get them for real cheap. So they can react to that when the time comes. And I think that's what camp will show us. So I think that there's still time for the Cowboys to kind of fill up that depth a little bit that Tony's worried about. And so, I mean, I'm just not worried about it not happening yet.
I think Dan's absolutely right in the sense that they're going to lean on the first choice being, let's save our money. Let's see what we got. They're going to give them ample time to try to win jobs and impress people, right? Because they can fool themselves in a week or two of camp that we don't need to add this. This guy's great. And I think, ultimately that's what they're going to do. And and I would love for them to be honest with themselves. And if they have to add somebody, then make the right decision. And hopefully it's not too late.
Yeah. Try and not sugarcoat it, essentially.
I want to close with something, and we can get everybody's thoughts here, and then we'll kind of tabulate through the winners here. I haven't read this article yet myself, but Charles Robinson of Yahoo, one of the NFL's most foremost insiders, this is the opening line to his write-up, his most recent write-up, and he's obviously very well connected to the Cowboys. Was at Cowboys camp today, it seems. Again, just going to read it to you guys. Go read it. The Dallas Cowboys' official 2022 training camp kicked off on a stage perched under gray clouds and described in similarly gray tones. But when Jerry Jones finally stopped talking on Tuesday, the path forward had steered into 100% visibility, or to borrow Jerry's term, viability, for head coach Mike McCarthy. This is the real kicker part. As the Cowboys push forward, McCarthy has got the backing of owner Jerry Jones right into a corner of sorts. Do we agree that Mike McCarthy is? I mean, people have said this in different ways. Is this the I mean, it does feel like the ownership, the front office group, however you want to put it, like they are squarely not just pointing, but heightening the pressure that is on Mike McCarthy. They are setting him up to be their fall guy, is our kind of closing point where you can all tie in your closing arguments. The floor is yours. Points are up for grabs.
It doesn't sound like that they just have no trust in McCarthy at all, essentially. And I loved the description you were talking about the grey skies. It sounded as though you were talking about Castle Grayskull there. So I love that, RJ. So, but yeah, it really just sounds like the Jones family are just like having that distance from McCarthy in a way, and just it was really uncomfortable.
It feels like a couple where they're already like checked out. Like they're, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're mentally out on this. You know what I mean? This relationship with McCarthy. Those are the vibes I get. So I'm with you, Paul. A couple points to you.
Yeah, and it feels like Jerry has to caveat everything to death when he's talking about the head coach, and it just, I think they're setting the stage for pushing McCarthy if things go at all bad this year. And
it feels like to your point, Tom. It's like somebody, you know. I'm gonna butcher Lord of the Rings, but it's like when Gandalf is like, I can't take the ring, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like somebody has to take this ring, and it can't be me. So Frodo, you're the only other person here. I guess it's you. Like it's process of elimination. Like it kind of feels like that's the situation that we're kind of watching unfold with the Cowboys. Dan, you can go next, and then Tony, you can close us off.
Yeah, I don't agree. I mean, I hate disagreeing with you guys so much, but I feel
that
like
doesn't seem to be the case, Dan. But go ahead.
No, but hey, that's what I'm telling you. You know, it kind of reminds me of like the 2014 season when you know Jason's coming off 3 straight 8-8, and it's like, oh, you know, we all expected him to be gone, and then they released DeMarcus Ware, you know, and it's just like, all right, now they're just like setting him up for failure. He has no chance and everything. And of course, they had one of their better seasons, you know, in 2014. So the Cowboys, they believe in themselves. They believe in this team. They're not trying to set McCarthy up or just like, okay, this is going to just implode, and then you're going to be a fall guy, and then we got other options. They believe that they are going to win. They believe this is a great football team. Now, whether it's true or not we don't know, but they really believe this, and they think McCarthy is going to be their guy until he's not, and that may happen next year. But I don't think that they're just like, you know, almost like a lame duck type situation. It's like, you know what, this is we're prepared to have a bad season, and then we'll cut you loose and then move on.
Tony, I'm going to set you up this way. I love you, and I know I call you the biggest homer on our show sometimes, and I promise that what I'm about to say is a compliment. I know that some people might misconstrue it. You give me George from Seinfeld vibes sometimes, like the way you kind of you're just kind of matter-of-fact approach to a lot of things. And what Dan just described is the classic it's not a lie if you believe it sort of you know mentality from George Costanza, right? Like that's like Dan is saying, look, I don't know if it's true or not. They believe these things. We're questioning why they believe them is where we're all coming from here. So Tony, do you agree with that the Cowboys have convinced themselves of whatever potential false reality lies ahead of them, including whether or not Mike McCarthy is a part of that in the future?
Yeah, you know, first off, I'm a big Seinfeld guy. I do relate to George a lot.
It's the glasses. That's really what that's all it is. It's the glasses.
That George is, you know, that's my guy. But yeah, I think there hasn't been a team in the history of the NFL that's ever got up open training camp and said, yeah, you know, hoping to win a couple football games here. You know, hopefully we can get the, you know, everyone's going to tell you that they think they're going to win the championship. And, you know, my whole thing is the people that Jerry Jones really like loves, respects, and admires and wants to go to bat for, he goes to bat for them. And I felt like at few times this offseason, because Mike McCarthy's been fighting for his life since February in the media. He's had so many chances to be like, and even today, like he started off by saying like, let me just address this. Let me get this out of the way. And then still left you with damn, that wasn't really much of an endorsement there. So he's kind of left them hanging a little bit. And ultimately, Mike McCarthy is going to give you the coach talk. Stephen Jones is going to give you the pie talk, and Jerry Jones is going to say something. So ultimately, when they talk and they do their thing, you feel like you should feel good about it, and you say like, I don't know what they said, but it sounded good, and then you end up going, I don't know, maybe they go 12-5. So, and for me, I think they believe it, or at least like you said, they're gonna, it's not a lie unless you believe it. I mean, if you believe it. So, hey, we'll see.
To your point, Tony, and it's not just Jerry Jones that will go to bat. It's the Cowboys. The Cowboys will, to a fault, have the backs of people who they love deeply, whom they love, whatever. And Tom, I saw you interact with this tweet of mine. Stephen Jones said nobody, what was the line, Tom? Nobody believes in Zeke Elliott more than we do, more than this organization.
Yeah.
And you, Tom, like a lot of people that respond to the tweet, were like, we know, we are very aware of that. Right. And so to that point, Tony, like they have Zeke's back, like feed Zeke, Zeke who they will do anything. They will move heaven and earth for Zeke because he's one of their guys. They don't treat Mike McCarthy the same way, which is a little bit indicative of maybe the bigger picture. But speaking of the bigger picture, it's time to tie a bow on the first roundtable of the season. A very heavily contested battle. Hats off to all four of our competitors here today. Tony Catalina on Twitter at Tony_Catalina. Tom is at TomRyleBTB. Dan is at DannyPhantom24. Paul is at IMP_Stu. Once again, you can hear all of them on different days on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. So make sure you subscribe, leave a rating, write a review. In last place, we had a tie. It was actually a tie for third place. Dan and Paul, 21 points apiece. Speaking of Zeke Elliott, not enough, but you guys get to split the bronze medal. I don't know if you want to go 50-50 or have like jagged pieces and be like best friends where they meet. You know what I'm saying? So that's up to you guys, however you want to handle that. With NFL's all-time leading rusher, Emmitt Smith, Tony Catalina, hailing from Martha's Vineyard, I think. I'm not exactly sure of Tony's latitude and longitude coordinates, but it's in that neck of the woods. But shout out Tony Costanza, 22 points. Not good enough, though. You do get to take home the silver. Our gold medalist, the most points by far from the crowd, the most points by far from his peer. Veteran, Master Grand Supreme, Tom Ryle, 25 points. A quarter of a C note. Tom, what do you have to say for yourself? You took home the first roundtable win of the season.
No one is more shocked than I am.
This was an objective process. It's an objective, mathematical, democratic process, Tom. That's how it's always been around here. So who do you want to thank the most?
I just want to thank the people that listened in, man. I just love to have some people paying attention to our miscellaneous ramblings here. And here's hoping we have a lot more of these and have a lot of fun.
To that point, AJ, I'm going to try my hardest to pronounce it. Narasimhan says, good stuff, fellas. Just subscribed if you haven't yet and you're watching, whether live or after the fact. Please do subscribe here to the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel. Once again, subscribe to the Blog of the Boys podcast network. Leave a rating, write a review. Make sure you check out blogoftheboys.com. Follow all of these fine gentlemen on Twitter and really just find their home addresses and stalk them and go leave them, send them Tiff's treats or crumble cookies, whatever the case may be. Everybody needs that kind of pick me up. Might be a bit of an international charge for Paul, but we'll get that squared away. So as we close, Tony, give us a poem. 2 lines, and they have to rhyme with one another. It can be about any subject you want in this world. It can be the Cowboys. It can be food. It can be culture. It can be politics, religion, whatever you want, my friend.
Roses are red. Violets are blue. Stephen Jones is feeding us pie. What else can you do?